Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it.
Someone's got to do it.
With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Hey, I'm Josh Haynes. Gentlemen, what are we talking about today?
Trump, taxes, tariffs, trucking. You know, is it tragic? Is it terrifying? Is Paul going to have a meltdown?
I mean, I'm not going to have a meltdown. I never have a meltdown. In fact, it's actually kind of nice due to the snow in Kansas City that we had today. This is the first show I've ever done not wearing shoes. Here for it.
Hey, you're like the new drivers that are showing up to orientation.
Go grab my flip-flops. The quick disclaimer real quick for everybody who's like, hey, you guys seem like you've been a little political lately. Well,
Yeah.
the political arena has been so intense that it's changing trends by the week. So it's kind of almost like we could talk about what the moving trends are in recruiting and marketing, but a big part of that comes from the trend in everything is changing all the time at all times. So we don't want to just give you outdated information. We want to give you what could be affecting things.
Yeah, I mean, we got to go through our normal beginning of the show shout outs where you can find us, and we're going to dive more into it, but there's a lot to digest here. So, Paul, where can people find us?
Well, you can find us just about anywhere. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube, etc. And also anywhere that you do find us, if you could like, subscribe, rate, it helps push us out a little bit more, gets us a little more momentum so we can do some cooler stuff.
Yeah, you can even find us on Reach Across America Radio on Trucking Tuesdays. And if you want to get more involved in the show, go to centspermilepodcast.com. You can suggest a topic to be a guest or even to become a sponsor.
Sponsor? Who's our sponsor today, Charles?
We got TAFS, where they make factoring fun and efficient. So if you want to get your money on time and have a good time with some good people, check out TAFS.com.
All right, well, it's time for the news. All right, so it's time for 10-2 News, where we go back and look at recent things that have happened in the news that we find interesting, check out some different articles, talk about them, break them down, discuss them from CDLlife and other places. Charles, it's your week. What do you got first?
All right, so I went to CDLlife.com and I saw this article where the FMCSA relaxes hours of service rules for live chicken haulers amid the egg shortage. Now, hey, there's a lot of pluses to relaxing the rules. I think they need to be relaxed altogether and put back into the professionals' hands since they're the one doing the job. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. Instead, we're going to break some eggs here. So I know, right? I can do the bad dad jokes too. So on February 8th, the FMCSA issued a regional emergency declaration in response to the spread of highly avian influenza, resulting in widespread loss of chicken flocks and affecting areas impacted populations and the food supply and blah, blah, blah. Basically, there's a shortage of eggs. Your prices are going up. They've relaxed the hours of service. Now, this is something that we've always kind of joked about on the show. It's amazing how they can relax safety when there's shortages and needs, and drivers are the heroes and all that stuff. But we're not listening to those professionals on the road that are saying, hey, these hours of service don't work in the first place. So here's another example of it. We're relaxing hours of service to try to get eggs on the shelves faster. I mean, I saw it the first time this week. For me, and we're surrounded by farms. You go to the store and eggs prices are through the roof. And, you know, no matter what side you sit on, you're sitting there like, crap. What's the other options?
Being vegan.
Nah, I like my eggs. And just like politics, they're scrambled. But But yeah, the president's not the only one signing declarations right now. You know, we have the FMCSA out here doing the same. They're relaxing the hours of service for the drivers. There are some stipulations. So before dispatch, the motor carrier must have a valid agreement from the receiving facility. A driver must not drive more than 16 hours in a 24-hour period. The driver must stop all driving by midnight each day. I mean, and the list goes on. So I highly recommend going on there if you're someone that's hauling eggs, you know, see how this all breaks down. It's on CDLlife.
So we news it up a lot, and we obviously pay attention to the news. And maybe I missed it in the shuffle of everything. But last I checked, weren't they one of the federal like agencies that have been like frozen? So how are they what are they what?
They work for free? Hopes and Dreams? Well, I can't be on Hopes and Dreams because trucking's lacking a lot of that right now.
Yeah, that I'm okay. Well, you know, hey, our service. If you can light it up in any way possible, I'm here for it.
Well, you know, it's news and it's trucking, so it's time to go doom and gloom. So that's why I started with the egg story from CDLlife, because now we're going to go into a lot of people have been reaching out to the show, reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, what do you see happening?
So we made the omelet first before we broke some eggs. Nice. Backwards.
So I wanted to kind of pull off some articles that were covering the questions that were coming in. A lot of people were asking, where do you see the industry going? Well, honestly, I don't think we're out of the hot water yet. I don't think, and I've said it all along, I don't think you're going to see this huge swing and everything's going to be better because an election took place. It takes time, processes, and some of these people were kind of broken before this year started. So the most recent article, this one's from FreightWaves. Auto hauler Jack Cooper shutting down. CEO sends out an email to the workers. In an email sent out on Monday, Jack Cooper's employees sent an email out saying with extraordinary sadness that we are writing to let you know after 97 years in business, Jack Cooper will be closing the doors in the near future. Now, there's a couple of reasons that this happened, but one of them is their loss of Ford Motor Freight. They terminated that contract with their 30-day out clause, and then they lost General Motors. So they've been around for a long time. General Motors and Ford both pulling out. We know the car market's been a struggle. You see the used car prices starting to rise again. You see the new cars sitting on the lot. Normally around this time, you start seeing all that new inventory. You're actually still seeing a lot of old inventory out there right now. You're even hearing about the car manufacturers having layoffs and stuff. So when you take all of this and encompass it together, it's not shocking to see one of the major longstanding auto haulers shut their doors. Now, this is written in the near future, so this is still a developing story. Someone can come and bail them out. Someone can swallow the company up and add to their fleet. I'm not sure. We'll be paying attention to it. But for all of those affected by it, I know it's a scary time, and we're in a scary world right now. But thoughts and prayers out to you, because this is unfortunate at a time when there's a surplus of drivers already looking for work. You don't want to be a driver joining that. So
I really thought that was going to turn into a hot seat pitch.
no, I don't do that on cents per mile. But if you need drivers, Hot Seat Services, hiring drivers is their jam. No, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
The next story is St. Louis Trucking Company affiliate files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So Angie's Transportation and STL Equipment Leasing cite the freight market challenges in a bankruptcy filing. I know, shocker, spoiler alert. The freight market is still causing a bloodbath out there, and I don't think it's over. A lot of these companies have bought a lot of assets at overpriced over the market value of them. A lot of them had been spending too much, and we're starting to see those roosters come home. And, you know, you make your bed, you have to lie in it. So here's Angie's Transportation and sister company STL Leasing out of St. Louis filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy in December. The U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Eastern District of Missouri The filing came amid lawsuits filed against the companies and some of their lenders. According to the court documents, they defaulted on at least 10 purchase money loan agreements. I mean, if you're going to go down, that's kind of the way. So the company provides truckload and less than truckload refrigerated freight services, operates 80 power units, and has 60 drivers that are going to be affected by this. So this is another one that you see all of this happening right now, and you're like, oh man, what's the silver lining? Well, yeah, is there going to be a silver lining? Time will tell. But right now, what we're seeing is still the industry course correcting itself. You talk to a lot of the drivers out there and they say there's too many trucks on the road. That's why freight rates are. You talk to the ATA and they say we need more drivers. I think this is one of those things where when you take it all together and you start connecting the dots, you realize that trucking is broken, and amongst everything else that's going on out there, they're feeling it. I don't necessarily think it's rainbows and unicorns happening in trucking right now. You saw that little bit of optimism at the beginning of the year. New administration, saw the spends come up, saw people being very optimistic. And now you're seeing reality set in. I don't see people out there saying the sky's falling, but I do think people have come to the realization that things are going to course correct over time, not overnight. And if you were hoping all your problems would poof and go away, that's not the case. If you are confused, check out Angie's Transportation.
Okay, hold up. There is a lot to unpack there.
I was waiting for you.
Because not just because of what was said, but because of the way that you in particular said it. So yeah, so if you go back, I don't know if we'll cut to it or not, but it definitely previously said, spending money based on confidence from campaign promises is a terrible plan. But we talked about a lot in, like 22 and stuff, about all the owner operators who were getting flushed out from all the big markets and how that was going to have to go down and correct itself before it came up. And then it went down and more of them got put out. And then in 23, we're like, yeah, it's just still part of that process. And then 24 was like, oh no, the freight market's not doing very good, but that's okay. First quarter 2024 will be good, and the third quarter 2024 will be 2025 will be our holy. It is not. It has not. It's not going. Nothing has. So I at what point do you stop saying, oh, well, it's not going to be overnight, or oh, it's going to get worse before it's going to get worse before it gets better? Okay, it's been getting bad for like 3 years now, dog. When are we going to like acknowledge and appreciate that this is just?
Let me go grab my snow globe and ask you the question.
This has just been a slope with bumps. Like yes, it is broken and it does need to readjust, but at what point are we going to like? At what point, I guess, does it become? At what point do people start talking about the quiet stuff out loud?
Well, I think it's coming up in the next article, actually, because you're starting to see it outside of trucking. So there was the next article actually talks about layoffs hit more than 7,100 workers tied to the freight industry in the U.S. and Canada. Places such as Amazon, Fila, Kohl's, Del Monte, Lytics, Lineage. That's 7,100 workers hitting the market looking for a job. Mass layoffs continue across any freight related company. I don't think you're going to see a bounce back the way that you've historically hoped. You heard these people over the last years like, oh, it's going to be a big swing, the election, this, that. I think there's more things at play here. And now we're in a administration where what we talk about today won't be relevant tomorrow, possibly, and certainly won't be relevant next week. And we're going to get into that more in the episode. But when you take these mass layoffs, when you take possible pending tariffs, when you take, trade wars in general, when you take all of that and then rising costs and bad policies and bad processes, and you encompass them all together, you get the dumpster fire that we call today's news.
Yeah. You're talking about like newer bad policies or old bad policies? Because I'm pretty sure it's both.
All of them.
All
of them.
It's just not. We're not like what? Why can't it? It's like recruiting departments who still use paper to process drivers. Speaking of processing drivers, it's actually time to go behind the desk with Tenstreet.
Do you want to grow your fleet but get buried by paperwork, slow hiring processes, and outdated systems, all while struggling to comply with changing safety regulations? Enter Tenstreet, the all-in-one platform that simplifies driver lifecycle management by bringing marketing, recruiting, onboarding, safety, and retention together in one place. Tenstreet coordinates and streamlines all your operations. Post to dozens of job boards at once. Speed time to hire with pre-population and AI to get more full applications faster. And manage the entire post-hire process, from cutting costs with online onboarding to integrating all safety data into one dashboard, to improving retention through thoughtful engagement. Whether you have one truck or 1,000, our expert team is here to help. Sleep soundly knowing you can pass an audit, attract needed drivers, and achieve your business goals. Join the thousands of carriers using Tenstreet. Sign up for a demo today.
At TAFS, we offer unparalleled trucking excellence and service. Enjoy exclusive benefits like fantastic tire discounts and 1-hour advances for quick cash. Recognized as the top factoring company in 2023, we're your partner for success. Access business loans, manage finances with ease through our client portal, F2 fuel card, and mobile app. Contact us now to see how we can help your trucking business thrive.
All right, we're back, and it's time to make sense. And it's hard to make sense out of this current market, this current news cycle. There's a lot to unpack, and we were kind of alluding onto it during the news. So to kind of segue into where we're at now, let's talk tariffs. Let's talk Trump. Let's talk taxes. You know, there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to pick one out of the hat, and I'm going to talk about taxes. Let's lighten it up. It is tax season. And if you're I know, right?
Let's talk about
who doesn't want to pay taxes.
Let's talk about taxes to lighten it up. Jeez.
Yeah. So let's talk taxes. Right now, the current per diem for a driver's full day is $80. For a half day, $60. There are a couple things as a driver you can do to help mitigate your tax liability. And I wanted to cover a little bit of these. So here are some key deductions for you as a driver. If you didn't track them last year, it's early enough in the year to start tracking them now. Keep track of your vehicle expenses. That includes fuel, maintenance, repairs, insurance, and yes, depreciation. Equipment and supplies, license and permit fees, health insurance premiums, meal expenses, communication costs, professional fees, you know, those accountants, those people that are doing your taxes, and association dues. I don't know why you would be in an association. I haven't seen any other than OIDA that are worth a shit. But if you are, make sure you're saving those receipts. These are all things you can help do to mitigate your tax liability. And you'd be surprised at how many drivers, Paul, we talk to. They're like, oh yeah, I started saving my receipts, and by April they stopped. And then come tax time and they're like, oh, I got to go back in time and make up numbers, or I got to take the minimum deduction because I don't have receipts in case I get audited. I remember religiously saving that stuff. And yes, taxes have changed with the standard deduction and all that. But as a driver, I saved those receipts. I had a big old manila envelope. I remember giving them to my accountant and saying, here you go. And at that point, it made me feel like I was rewarding myself because I know what I was paying them to do the taxes. So at least I got a little joy handing them this hosh posh of receipts for a year in the truck.
Yeah. Well, the only thing though too is like with that standard deduction having moved up, the last time somebody made a big change to the taxes, there's a lot of company drivers it doesn't make any sense to hang on to receipts because they're not going to be able to itemize past that. Especially when, you know, like the company's not going to let you take the deduction on the truck, you know, because it's their equipment, you know, so it's not really, that's really an owner operator thing. And I feel like at that point though, one big thing though, I will say is there are a lot of apps for that too, to actually keep track of that stuff where you just take a picture and then.
Yeah, shameless plug here. So I get to be an employee again, which is awesome come tax time. But one of the cool things was I tested out the TurboTax app for filing taxes. I did it in my bed, laying next to my wife, in 54 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like 54 minutes. All I did was snap a picture, it uploaded, verified. I mean, they've made it so much easier than it used to be. The only thing that they can't do is make you save your receipts. So one of the tips I have found useful when I owned a business and when I was driving was I'd snap pictures of the receipts. I didn't want to track paper copies all the time, and I wanted to have a backup. So I snapped pictures and just shared the drive with my accountant. Like, there's all kinds of things you can do. You want to make sure you're leveraging those so you can mitigate as much of that liability come tax time as possible. So just a couple tips and tricks there so you can have a better time come taxes. It's always a goal to get money back and not have to pay more out. And if it's not your goal, go to centspermilepodcast.com. We are now accepting donations if you have too much money. I know, right? So let's switch gears a little bit. Trump time news. It's changing every day. There was a news brief last week where you had Doge in the office. You had Elon in his trench coat standing like Mr. Burns. I'm going to start doing that on the show just because I thought it was a flex. And he was explaining everything he was doing. I know it's actually very intimidating when you see yourself in the camera doing it. But they were talking about a couple things, Paul, that I thought was unique. All right, so you know how they have the voluntary resignation of U.S. government officials.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to cut down.
Yeah.
Did you know that they can only process 10,000 of those a month currently?
I don't know about that.
Hey, it came from the Doge.
Right. So I don't know about that.
Do you doubt the Doge?
Yeah.
All right. So supposedly, here's the story. All that paperwork's kept on shelves and boxes in this like 1960 limestone cave with like 230 feet of track that goes down a cave elevator, mine shaft elevator. And the reason they can only process 10,000 of these a month is because of the elevator. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, all right, I used to think trucking was like 30 years behind everything. But when you hear about this process, you start to realize that it might not just be contained to trucking. It just might be things in general. It seems like a way to complicate a one-car funeral to depend on a mine shaft elevator to get the paperwork down there. But it might explain why it takes so long to get VA benefits. Just saying.
Well, but I mean, at the same time, you know, if you're specifically talking about retiring, it's not too typical that many people retire in mass. So that's kind of unless certain things happen and they're terrible.
The trucking industry's turnover is pretty bad. Can you imagine if we needed a mine shaft elevator to process resignations?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what dropping off and picking up at a customer is like for drivers. And that's why everybody tries to fight detention pay, because they spend so much money on that, because that's what it is. It's filing in and out, and it takes forever because there's a huge line, because you can only get so many in and out at such a speed. So yeah, it's the same problem. But also, is it true? Because that's the same guy who got asked about something you said that was debunked, and then he said, "Oh, well, some of the things I'm going to say are going to be incorrect." Here we have a clip.
How can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes.
Yeah, and we also have pictures of Iron Mountain that are going to go up. I think it's a thing.
But in that clip, he defends what he was talking about with another untrue claim that's been debunked. So it's like, you can show me pictures, but like the context, like I don't. what else happens in there? You know, like it can't just be like that's not the government retirement office. Jesus, right? But like that's I don't know, and I think my big thing with that, because to keep it related to trucking, is that those inefficiencies are there, but you know, sometimes people don't think about the things that they might see as inefficiencies aren't inefficiencies. the things they might see as bad or not as good might be not that terrible from somebody else's perspective. Which is something that, I feel like gets done to drivers a lot through legislation. It's like, oh yeah, this is bad, but it's like that makes things 10 times worse for the driver.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of why I was kind of thrown back on this. When you looked at what they reported that federal employee retirements are processed using paper by hand in an old limestone mine in Pennsylvania. 700 plus mine workers operate 230 feet of underground to process 10,000 applications per month, which are stored in manila envelopes and cardboard boxes. The retirement process takes multiple months. There's so many areas there that could be improved, but yet they're saying that this facility's, been around since like the 1950s, 1960s, somewhere in there. It's kind of like some of the rules that we have from the FMCSA. They put these things in place and no one goes back and revisits how they can get made better. Where can we improve? And I think that's kind of the spirit of where people entertained this administration currently, is they just want to see change. And even if it's in an extreme fashion, they're open to change and seeing if they can get different results. Drivers are not much different. They want to see change. You got a lot of drivers rooting for the broker transparency thing. You got some against it. I understand both sides. We've covered it on the show. Then you got the bathroom access. You got the hours of service. Like, we keep seeing people stack on to this job that's already not that appealing to today's new drivers coming in, but no one's taken any of that crap off. That doesn't make sense anymore. And it's like, why can't we just look at things and say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, and if it doesn't make sense, get rid of it? Instead, we just keep adding to it. I think I told you in a conversation one time that you used to be able to understand all the laws, all of them. I mean, as a lawyer, you could understand all the laws. Now it's gotten to the point where you could be a career lawyer and not understand all the laws. And don't quote me on it. I'll post it in the comments when we go on air with this. But there's a stat out there that the average person breaks one law like a month, because there's just some crazy laws out there. There's like laws where if you don't have $1 in your pocket, you're technically breaking the law. I think there should be an audit system in place where if these things are no longer relevant, get rid of them. Why are they sitting on paper active somewhere? Like, all these people putting this new stuff out there, can't we get rid of some of the old junk?
Well, I mean, that's really where it comes down to enforcement, but like, could we stop adding junk and actually add things that help or make life better? Or like, maybe make sure that a driver can go inside to go to the bathroom. It doesn't matter who you put in charge. It doesn't matter that people keep stacking things up. Nobody's coming to save anything.
So I'm glad you said that, Paul. The other story that they mentioned was the fact that the do not pay list. This seemed crazy to me, that if you as a vendor for the U.S. government go on the do not pay list, for the systems to communicate and enforce the do not pay, it could take up to a year of you getting payments after being put on the do not pay list. That's ludicrous. I mean, you got trucking companies out there on net 90.
I mean, okay, here in defense of the government, which I don't do very often, how many, I'm not trying to quote like a Rocket Money commercial, but how many subscriptions do you actually have, Charles? Anyway, I think that's about time. We got to go to an ad.
CDLlife has the largest, most engaged driver audience in the world and is the #1 platform for driver-facing news, entertainment, and community. With millions of monthly page views on our news site, a social reach of over 71 million, and over 600,000 app downloads, it all adds up to 1 billion driver touchpoints a year. If your company is looking for drivers, you just found them.
All right, we're back. So with the Trump news, tariffs, taxes, there's a lot of ongoing things here. We're going to try to cover it all on cents per mile. Paul and I work diligently to bring you the most relevant news. So just tune in to next week's Cents Per Mile, and we'll try to keep it up for you. It's a full-time job right now.
It might all seem super doom and gloom, And we might not always be able to bring you hope, but we'll be here playing the instruments on the Titanic while it sinks the whole way down. Stay tuned.
Thanks for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Grace.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. Hopefully see you next time.